I'm Branka from Slovenia. When I was younger, I was full of anger. I didn't know even that emotions have any relevance in our life. The same for thoughts. I basically believe that our actions show who you are, what you do, and that's all. And on the top of that, there was also this belief that you cannot change brains, what is wired, and it stays that way. So when you reach 25 years, you are all set and there's very little space. But it was interesting because I accidentally went to study economy. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with business, went further in management, and it was all amazing. I was so excited to start a career, enter the market, and to help to connect leaders with people because growing up in a middle class family, I observed many people who were pissed off about the leaders. They are not doing anything. They are just blaming and shouting and so on. And when I started to explore economy and later management, it was the opposite side of the coin. So people are lazy. They are not working. They are not productive. And I was sure and completely convinced that there is a way to connect those two and find this sweet spot to actually make the business better for leaders as well as employees. It was beautiful vision, but life turned me around because I got ill. It stopped my study. It basically thrown me into the self-development at 18 years old. So it was painful way, but slowly I started to explore emotional intelligence, neuroscience, hormones, basically how our body works, brain works. Later on, this interconnection was what fascinated me and what also helped me to reach this level that I'm basically more in control of what I feel, what I do, how I think, and building up these steps. So, alongside with this road, it was interesting that in times of illness, I supported a lot of women who went through the same experience. It was an informal way of coaching and helping them. And it started to be my passion, but I wanted to get a little further and implement that into my other passion, which was business. So I started to dig even more with new research about how to build up teams, support people, and how leaders can use neuroscience and emotional intelligence to actually level up things. So now for 3 years, 4 years, I'm active on this area. So empowering people, especially business professionals who are eager to deliver, to do good and serve the world. But at the same time, I remember them with compassion that they need to support themselves to be in the game long term.
First of all, that's very young to have that kind of awakening or event that inspires you.
Yeah, but it was great. If I just add, I was very frustrated. Why is this happening? I'm just starting to live. But today, looking back, it's about 10 years now. I'm grateful because I wouldn't be myself as I am today and wouldn't be able to support others the way I am if this experience was not there. So we learn a lot.
You said that you were very angry.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that anger. Where did it come from? Where did it start?
I don't quite recall when it started. I know I was really curious from the young age. I asked a lot of questions, and you can imagine that adults didn't have time to answer all those questions. And I assumed that those situations were forming this belief I'm not heard, it's not okay to ask questions, it's not okay to be curious. But I still questioned things because I saw some conflicts. I saw that things could be different. And a special aspect that frustrated me was this judgment people had to one another. As I was growing up, I was confused with social interactions. I felt different and I saw things in a different way. So it was frustrating. A classical story of I feel different and nobody understands me and I'm curious. On top of that, it was also divorce in my family. It was not about fighting. I'm so proud of my parents of how they handled divorce. But for me, I was 11. I was just hitting puberty. And that was the time when I basically built up my confidence to the point that I became aggressive. because before I did not allow myself to express myself. I was shy, I was hiding, I was pleasing people. And when I transitioned to another school, I made a decision. This is a new start. I will be me all the way. So you can imagine, and this happens to a lot of people now as I'm speaking with different kind of people, that when we start to at boundaries or step up in our game of confidence, we become a little bit too aggressive in it because we don't have the skill to balance it. We don't have this matter how strong we should say it in order to be heard. Yeah, the puberty was really about this discovering, am I accepted if I say so? Will you respect it? How far I have to go? And the last and strong one was really to make up the point that who I am is who I am. You accept me or not. This is something that got me the nickname of crazy in a good way because I said things. I was not afraid of things. I was not afraid to make a joke. I told people what I think. I was honest. I was not rude, but yeah, at some levels, I told people what they needed to hear. And later on, I learned that you need to have a little balance of what is appropriate to comment and what not. But yeah, at that time, it was learning, it was youth, and it was interesting, basically. And I didn't quite understand and know at that time that I'm so aggressive and angry.
So initially you polarized to being aggressive and angry and telling people what they needed to hear. How did you learn to moderate that?
It was interesting because at one point I was so proud of that because I knew how to stop people. They would not abuse me, they would not attack me. And I was proud of that. But when I started to experience this pain, it was chronic pain every day. And it started this journey of exploring what it was and later got diagnosis and dived even more because it's misunderstood, not well researched. So I dived into everything that is possible, available to read. And at that time, it was more about hormones, and I was still angry. I was angry at the doctors, at the scientists, at the system, at all the people who didn't believe I actually had pain because it's invisible illness and you look fine, still angry a lot. And it's frustrating because you're grieving about your past. I was 18 and my life turned all around from going out to hang out and enjoy my life. I was bedridden and going to the doctors, not so pleasing. And as I was proceeding and my mental health started to get worse, I met this emotional intelligence. I decided to dive into the book I got as a gift. As I read this book, I was like, oh my goodness. First of all, there is more to emotion than I ever believed it's possible. And the other was I'm angry almost all the time. I cover a lot of things with my anger. At the same time, I believed it was okay. It was good. I was proud of it. And that was the hard part. So when this came, I slowly started to address it and to really dive into what is that makes me angry? What is this trigger? Why do I feel such desire basically to express myself in this way? And it was quite a journey, I could say, exploring, learning, and actually implementing new ways to handle things because automatic response is strong.
First, for clarity, the book was that Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence.
Yeah, the first dose is 1995, I believe. So it's really emotional intelligence. All the details and all the research that was done so far was conducted in this book, and it was amazing read. And if I add one interesting part, the first part of this book is basically a lot of neuroscience and stuff. And as I started to read this book, all excited, and I got to this point, and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't understand anything. I have no clue what I'm reading. The author said it's important for understanding, and I was like, okay, maybe I should skip this. This is too hard. But I was stubborn enough to say myself, okay, read it, even if you don't understand it, get through it. It will get a lot more interesting in the next part, but read it. And few years later, as I was researching and meeting neuroscience and exploring the brain, it was fascinating to read this chapter all over again and actually understand what it's saying.
I was studying psychology when you had an assignment and you'd have all these books. I never went through the course reading all these things. I would just, when I had something to find out, I would, like, whenever there was an assignment and you'd get your essay or whatever, I'd just get the stack of books and then I'd go through it. And the first thing I used to do was I'd have all these, and the first thing I would do is I'd look through them and then I'd just fall asleep. I'd just go, oh, it's boring. And I'd have to do that a couple of times before I started going through it. And then eventually you find something that you get interested in. And then after that, it's smooth sailing. But getting into the actual first part, there's so much resistance. Oh my God, couldn't they have written it easier? And it's so boring. Do I really have to read all of this? So there's that initial resistance, isn't there?
Yeah.
Okay, so you felt this anger, you realized that there was or you looked into what was causing it. What did you come up with? If you don't.
I will not go into details, but in terms of emotional expression and emotional mechanism, it was basically the cover for many different emotions I didn't know how to express in a healthy way. So when I was sad, I knew I was sad and I was honest to myself that I was sad. But if anyone approached me, I was angry at them because I wouldn't open up to the fact that I'm sad. I had few friends that I trusted and I shared this. So one part was really the cover of all the other, from disappointment, fears, shame, resentment, neglect from myself, basically. It was all that. On the other side, it's generational trauma, it's ancestor trauma. So there are things that were basically given to me from the generation I was raised in, and at the same time from the family I was raised in. And this was also hard to accept because at that time I was really skeptical about all this trauma talk and I was resistant to it a lot. And it was until that I realized all this, so how our emotions work and how I actually can unlock this anger, that I started to notice the triggers. And like I said, and like I mentioned a lot of times, it was this base to be heard, loved, and feeling safe. Despite I didn't have any big traumatic experiences in my youth, I had pretty amazing childhood, but the emotional level and these mechanisms are still affected by certain events because I didn't have a role model to tell me and to teach me how to regulate those emotions. In certain situations, it became too much. And yeah, it became my coping mechanism to basically every threat my ego and my brain picked up from the environment, from everywhere.
And when you learned how to deal with it, when you come to resolve it and you come to understand it and learn how to deal with it, what was the difference?
It was a big one. First of all, it was interesting because I learned a lot about myself. I was sure I know myself. I know who I am. I know what I think. But it turned out that a lot of things were hidden and I was ashamed of them. But they were not shameful, but this culture makes you believe that you should keep them somewhere. And it was interesting because when there was periods of this chronic pain, it drains you. You are irritated, you're frustrated, and you get angry really quickly. The first step was that I realized that in those moments, I became angry and it was piling up. And not only the anger was stronger, but the pain was also stronger. And that was a great motivation to really start practicing it. And slowly, there was different ways that I used to address it. I tried a lot of different techniques because, like I said, I was resistant to those ideas about energies, about trauma. I didn't believe it. I was so programmed in this basic programming that we all get to some degree that I didn't believe that this can be true. So only science, only doctors and such. But as I didn't get the results there, I needed to dive in. It was really step by step. So first of all, to really understand and see myself in those situations, I'm getting up. And to realize what is the trigger, and even more to stop. The first step and the most important step was to learn how to even recognize I'm getting there and stop. And sometimes I still freaked out. Sometimes I still had those moments. But what I noticed is that the intensity got smaller. And at the same time, this episode became more controllable. And it gained me a lot of different insights because when you communicate with people, it has a lot of effect how you communicate. So when I was angry all the time, people didn't share with me a lot of things that were actually beneficial to me. So I started to get more information with others. Relationships were actually better. The communication opened up. At some point, it was really hard to communicate. I was only able to communicate with my partner and my mom. And I can tell you why, because they were the only ones, and my sister, they were the only ones who believed my pain. Quite interesting to look at. It was interesting to see how much life offers when you let it and you're not so stubborn in your mind and in your, I cannot do it, it's too hard, it's okay, I deserve this. Or maybe even it was more like I'm suffering so I can. And this is a vicious cycle you can get in because it's hard to get out.
A large part of the stimulus was the health condition that you had. And you mentioned that the anger made the symptoms worse, which makes sense because in anger, you're under stress. Stress makes you more hypersensitive to pain and plus the built up energy and whatever. Is it a lifelong condition, or did the improvement in emotional state change your physical conditions other than the instances of pain?
Yeah, I get what you are asking. So, first of all, yeah, it's a disease, it's endometriosis. So, it's a condition that a woman has during the period of being able to reproduce. And it's not really in the medical world, it's not treatable, it's not curable, it's lifelong, basically. And I would say that I don't want to basically say that all things and all symptoms and all the struggle will go away if you address your emotions, because this is a really big statement if you know the stories of women and what they are going through, because it's really painful, traumatic. I really talked with a lot of women, and this was also traumatic to learn. Even if I wasn't suffering as much, and even for me, it was hard as hell. So many of them had life crashed because of certain things that were connected with it. So, what I would say is that when I started to address those things and started to look at myself holistic and understood this connection, the body, the emotion, and the brain, I started to use this connection to actually improve my situation. So, in most simple way, I got from having 3 days a month pain free to the point that now I have 2 or 3 days a month with pain. And even that day, I have strategy and tools and routines that help me get it manageable, and that I basically don't need to take strong painkillers anymore. Because in certain times, I was on strong ones pretty all day and it still wasn't working like it should. So it was a big change, but with endometriosis, you never know. So even now, I cannot say if my physical tissue actually went off or not, because only operation shows. And so far, I hope that I don't need another for quite some time.
From what I understand, it's a hormonally related condition, and therefore stress is hormonally related. And so there's going to be a direct implication between the emotional state and the effects of the condition, I would imagine.
In one way, yeah. And this hormonal aspect is really what made me fully frustrated, because we knew that it's hormonal imbalance. But for a long time, I didn't know that hormones were actually expression of emotion or reaction. So when we experience emotion, this is a physical response of the body. It's chemical that is formed out of our emotion. And it was all the talk about adding emotions or such, but I always believe that we can get this balance And yeah, when you learn how hormones work and how stress, or if you're in pain, basically your whole body is under stress and you are basically piling up this tension unconsciously, because this is how we are made. We want to protect ourselves from whatever it is. And yeah, it's so interconnected. And when you are in such a situation, it's hard to even think positively, let alone feel something positive. It's really hard. And it's a lot of will and a lot of commitment that you start to do it. It was a hard quest, I can say.
I trained in nutrition, and besides the fact that almost no one sticks to diet, I realized that the emotional state changed how you dealt with chemicals. So it wasn't necessarily what you ate, but as much the emotional state that you were in when you ate it. So stress is so important for everything.
It's a big factor. And if I can add, it's interesting because in business world, there is a lot of focus on, do you handle stress? Are you good under pressure? I get it, because leadership is hard role. It has diverse responsibilities. And of course, some periods are stressful and there is pressure. What I would like companies and directors to realize is that really pushing people all the time is not a strategy. Those who are able to handle it for a year or two are not to be celebrated. Basically, they need help, because long term, if you want to keep this great leader, you need to give them space for rest, and you need to support them so that they actually can get this. With our bodies like that, like you said, it's stress and it's rest. And our body needs both. We are wired that we get the stress response so that we get all these chemicals and all these different physiological supportive actions. So we see better, we hear better, we start sweating, and so on. It's designed to protect us. But what is not present in this modern world is the fact that when the danger is gone, danger, pressure, deadline, whatever it is, that we get back and take time to restore, to relax, to regenerate. And if we are under stress, even if we don't know it, we learn to be always in a survival mode, we will over time drain our body and our energy and burn out. This is why managing stress and navigating emotions is essential.
Often we think you can look at people who seem to be strong, and their strength comes from a certain rigidity. And I always think in that dynamic, there's a point where something so rigid breaks. Whereas when you look at something like water, it just completely molds. It doesn't seem very strong, but because of its flexibility, it will never break. And it's like Bruce Lee said, be like water. Because if you have tension, then tension can be used against you. Tension is breaks at a point. And if you don't have any tension, then you can't break. But I think often people think tension is strength, but the tension is only strong until it reaches its breaking point, and that's when it snaps.
Beautiful, beautiful. Because yeah, it's in our society there is a certain honor badge for pushing it, for being the toughest, not basically not being affected by anything. People admire people like that. And it's because we want that, because we feel that society told us, and all those programs that we have are made in a way that you need to present in a certain way. You need to be positive, you need to collaborate, you need to be nice. And we are humans and we all experience certain emotions. A little difference comes with traditional upbringing, where men are allowed to be angry but not allowed to be sad, or whatever it is that is behind this. On the other side, women are allowed to be sad but not angry. It turns out that this imbalance, first in upbringing and then in understanding how our emotions work, really made a lot of confusion. This is why not so long ago, still many companies believe that emotions do not have a place in the business, ignoring the fact that all those positive emotions are still emotions. Stress is still related to emotions. Basically, every aspect of business is connected with it. And neglecting that or ignoring that or even brainwashing yourself that this does not have space here is nonsense. And I just wrote a post a few days ago on it that it was really about it's not the fact that every emotion should be celebrated and expressed and being proud of to show it. Office is not the space for expression of all emotion, but it has to be a space of acceptance to all emotion. So even if employee experience certain confusion or frustration and the leader sees that, so feels that, certain empathy to notice it, it's not okay that this leader lets him, okay, let it go, let it out, crush things, no worries, just go with the flow. No, that's not what leader would do. What leader with emotional intelligence would do would basically first acknowledge, I see you are frustrated. Tell me more. And this way will help balance the right and left uh, part of the brain. So that the employee, instead of drowning in these emotions, starts to verbalize it. So what am I feeling? What happened? And even if it's not psychological safe build up to the point that they are comfortable sharing, just the fact that leader noticed it, acknowledges this and says, give yourself a break for 10 minutes. I see you're frustrated. No worries, we'll take care of the rest. Get quick walk, breath, water, whatever it is. So having a permission to be human is a lot, because after 10 minutes this person will return grateful for recognition, grateful for the fact that it was heard, seen, this frustration was seen, and it was still accepted in a way that I'm part of this and I am still human and it's okay. Many people would think, okay, but what if I cannot lose those 10 minutes? Hear me out. If you don't do this, person will probably have a drop in productivity for at least an hour. This frustration affects every aspect of the work they do. So they are not as fast, as productive, as focused on details, and they will eventually take more time out of the workday if they are unaddressed when frustrated. On the leader's side, even leader, you cannot leave heart at home. You have it with you. You have it in your body. And there are many situations that are really tense. And you probably know that from so many different stories and your experience. And in those moments, for sure, on one hand, there is a drive. I need to solve it. I need to do something. I want to act. And what this does for many leaders, it is hard to deal with this guilt if you just think about it. Okay, just 5 minutes off to get myself back on the ground, and then I will deal with it. We have the same situation. If you take those 5 minutes, you will get to the calmness, clarity, and to the present. So you will actually be productive and you will respond. If you don't take this time, you will probably react and go on with this reaction wherever it drives you. And we know that those stories can be pretty painful and bad. So understanding this and actually embracing that, no, it's not that we let people go crazy in the office, but it's about acknowledging the fact that every emotion can happen there, and having this space and empathy or even compassion so that we actually offer solution to the fact that we take care of people. And step further would be actual training so that you can help people learn how to regulate them, how to basically build up those emotional foundations. But even if it's just this aspect of acknowledging and accepting this makes a lot of difference in team dynamics, in leaders, and in employees. It's a big win, I would say.
I always think emotions are information.
Yeah.
I used to have a website, the Emocom, because
Really?
I look, yeah, and because I look at, I'm very logical, and people think I don't understand emotions, but I just separate emotions because I think there's what you have to do. That's logistical, that's logical, and this is what you need to do. But emotions tell you when you're off course and when you're on course. And if you're on course, then you're fine. You don't need to really deal with emotions. But it's when you're off course, then that's when you need to take the information that the emotions are giving you. So if you're overwhelmed, it's because the frame that you're operating from It means that your strategy is you're trying to do much more than is your job to. And if you're stressed or it's overwhelmed or you're torn between two things, if you're angry, then there's some kind of fear underpinning it. Like you say, it's all about acceptance. When we accept the emotion, then it's guidance of whether we're on course or off course. I think emotions are how we judge how well our logistical strategy is working.
Interesting.
It's the match. It's the match between the context we're in and how we're operating within it, I think.
That's an interesting perspective. I didn't heard of that, and I'm just placing it around because it's interesting that I was always logical, so reasoning, numbers, and all that. And even now, it's a lot of importance there, and I respect all the information, and I love those structures and analyze it, and I love it. But I basically learned that every aspect has the benefit and like you said, it's basically, I like to say that emotions are basically speaking through our body and our language of our soul. So I don't know where you stand from the soul perspective, but you can say, tell me, how
Um,
do you perceive soul?
okay, we have an operating model. I look at operating system is the beliefs, the assumptions, and the expectations that the frame that we have of the world. And I see so that is how we operate within the world. It's like our autopilot. Emotions give us the goal of where we want to go to, and emotions tell us when we're on course or off course for our goal. When our operating system is flawed, so for example, this person is very rigid and they're like, I'm doing this, then what they're doing when someone who's very rigid has a fixed approach that I am right. If you link it to the soul, I would say the person that says, I am very rigid, I am right, I'm going to fight for my way. What they've done is made themselves God of their world because they're the determinant of what's right and what's wrong. And when they break, it's because their model, their internal map of the world is at odds with the reality of what is. And the world is showing them that they're off course, they're flawed in their thinking, and that is what's breaking them. And it's the fluidity of when you hit tension, the problem isn't the world, the problem is your map of the world. So whenever you feel a strong emotion, the emotion should take precedence over the logic because the emotion tells you that you're wrong or tells whoever that you're wrong. It's a sign to you that what I believe, what is, are wrong, that they're mismatched. And
Yeah, I want to jump in because this is tricky. I will give you something. There are people, so for example, you have certain awareness around emotional world, about inner world and such. But a lot of people do not have that. And a lot of those people that, like you said, are rigid and actually so tough and so on, they don't even have the connection with the emotions. It's emotional confusion, I like to say. When this clarity is not reached, like you said, I agree that basically we are quite similar. It's emotion and it's direction that we feel. So it's our purpose, our mission, where we are going, where we are driven, and what is important. And we build it up with this logical and our actions and our connections. But many people are on autopilot without even touching the heart. At some point, I envied that. I wanted to be phlegmatic. I wanted to be so I don't feel such a high intensity. But it was really mind blowing when I was speaking with a person who was phlegmatic. And what they told me is, I envy you because you feel things and you feel it fast. Exploring further, I learned that for some people, emotions were so prohibited in childhood. Every healthy expression of emotion, may it be good or bad or pleasant, unpleasant. I don't like to say positive, negative, but it was, and this is why they learned that you cannot trust emotions, you cannot show emotions, you cannot listen to emotions because so many times in youth they were told they are wrong. And that also meant that this adult was right. And now this little boy or girl grown up, and now he or she is right. Now I am an adult, and I will say what's appropriate and what is not. And we can reflects also in the business. How many leaders were excited? And it really doesn't matter if they had certain connection with emotions or not. They wanted to get a career and they started it and they climbed this ladder, and a lot of pressure, a lot of adversity, a lot of challenges, and some pretty rough bosses along the way made this desire to become this CEO or something even bigger. And they did even more. They overworked. They did their best to get there. It's a funny paradox of life when they reach all the beliefs they had about leadership and all the desire to inspire people, lead people. I will do it different. I know how to motivate and such. Were thrown out of because for so long they were observing, experiencing, and living in an environment that basically formed new patterns. And those patterns were being a boss. I'm right, you're wrong. Do it this way. I don't care what you think. Even if they want, this is the struggle we are often experiencing when I'm working on empowerment with somebody who finds out that they have a problem with this, is that we find out that even if they know how to support, they know what is needed to actually be empowering, to serve others, to inspire them, to lead them, guide them, coach them. But as the situation comes, they automatically become this boss they hated, this boss they were frustrated with, because it's this foundation is still built on outside power, outside authority, and this common belief that with the role and the title, there is a lot of things connected. And this, first of all, separating those two, who you are as human and what is your role, it's important. But even more, it's important to recognize what patterns did we pick up from role models that were learning us how to live, how to lead, or how to be. Does that make sense?
It does. That's what I talk about, the operating system, that we can know other stuff, but if it doesn't become laid down into our neurology, then it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, and it cannot be laid down until we learn those stories. So it's important to dive to some degree in emotion, that you can realize what story is connected. This is the first step that you can actually rewire your brain and form new connections. Because until you do this, automatic response is the strongest. It has the strongest wire and it will be dominant. And this is why, for example, visualizations and meditations and basically mental training is so powerful, because we can actually, first of all, reflect on, for example, it's overwhelmed or it's anger. So we examine it to the point that we understand what is off from our mission, what is happening that we are experiencing this, and what are the thoughts, beliefs, and such that are connected to it, supported to it. And slowly we can update this system. So we are making those updates. And when we connect all those three, we are making lasting change. And we are actually forming new pathways that over time can become the dominant one. And this becomes our second nature. But it is a journey, it's a process. And like I said, it's where you are on this journey. And many people are not even aware what emotions they are feeling, let alone what the story is behind them. So it's complex.
I suppose I was quite lucky or not, but the way that the world and school and things told you that things worked, I never had enough respect to, it didn't make sense to me. So I questioned from a young age. So I went to school and rebelled because none of it made any sense.
That was also one reason I was angry. I was rebel too.
Yeah, when you told your story, it was quite similar to mine actually, because none of school made sense. School, I should have thrived at because academically suited me. Maths and English I could do. I didn't work at anything else, but they were enough to get through with other subjects. Sport I was quite good at. So by every measure, like I came out top in the tests. I was the second best footballer. So that's how you get judged. And I see a lot of people struggled in their early years, which their character in other ways. I think it's very unfair. But however it was weighted towards my strengths. I've always had a problem in terms of leadership, as in I'm not going to just follow someone because they tell me to. And I've never wanted to lead because I don't want to lead other people. I think they should have free will for themselves. So I've always had that strong freedom thing. So going to school and being told you have to be here, and I was like, I can do this quicker. Why do I have to sit here? Why do I have to learn what you tell me to learn? So I had that rebellion all through school and college until I got to university and actually picked my own. But yeah, then I had a model, and I was going to build this big business. I was 20 and when I set up a gym, and 21 I was 60 grand in debt. I was homeless. I was sick because the stress of it, which was like your, I don't know, awakening maybe
Her
when you were 18.
experience, yeah.
Yeah. So that was really what changed my thinking. But I'm not very emotionally expressive. So you talked about the emotions. I'm not emotionally expressive. Like I don't give out anything, but I recognize it. I feel it internally. And I suppose what I always had, or maybe I have a low tolerance. As a child, I would, if I felt bad, I would sit and think, why? And I would go, wait, and break down what was the cause. And I just learned that being on my own, being able to think, someone then told me that basically what I was doing was meditating, but I would just think about things and break them down to where did they start from? What's the cause of it? And then it's like breaking everything down into facts, down into Lego bricks, and then assimilating a new model so that then I felt optimistic and I felt good about it and I would be able to go again. So I've never had a problem that I've not been able to just go off on my own, think about, figure out, and then not feel better. But I think my strength from that is I'm able to reframe perspective.
How
When
young?
I was
I'm sorry. How young were you? Very young.
very young, I suppose about 6, 7, 8, 9. But I've just always done that. I've always just took myself off to my bedroom. It's why even now, if I really need to think about something, I can't think at a desk. I can't think around people. My best place is to go to bed, sit on my bed. I'm away from everyone. I don't think as clearly when I'm around people. But when I can have that silence, like I can't have music, I can't have any noise. I just need to sit with whatever it is, break it all down, and have like my full focus on stuff like that.
That's wonderful. You probably had amazing role models. You know who it is, but someone gave you bits because in those age you are absorbing, and this process, if you had it, this is amazing. No wonder, on the other hand, that you maybe have a struggle with expression is the last part of emotional intelligence. It's the last bit of it. But this process, it's something I didn't know that emotion even have a story. Do you understand? Until the point I was, or even 20, I didn't know. And even more, I didn't have this reflection when I was, yeah, I was thinking I was reflecting but what I was doing, I was bullying myself and I was blaming all the other things and situations and such. So it was really big training for me to get to this level and this exercise that you got at such a young age. And that is fascinating and amazing. But do you allow me to say something regards it? It's based on the fact that you mentioned now, because it's really fascinating. And I may be wrong. As you experienced and learned this so young, you were not, many times, you didn't have a lot of situations when you would express emotion because you had this self mechanism to actually address it before it became too much. On the other side, a lot of people express it a lot and it can be pretty loud for you. And you are aware that this is not of your business. This is not about you, it's about them. So why would I bother? Why would I be involved? And it's on the other side, maybe, like I said, it's your choice if you want to also learn how to express them because not all people are excited to this. Many people actually prefer, yeah, to keep it to them. And I say that even that is healthy because if you are transparent within yourself, there's nothing wrong with it. You decide how much you share. But yeah, if there are some certain situations that you would like to express them, this aspect also can be trained and can be learned, but in according and unique to your perspective, of course, because you are unique.
I think the two are probably linked. I suppose because I never felt safe to express emotion, and it was because I felt I needed to deal with it myself. And so I think and I think probably because my way of operating in the world has always been to understand.
And
And so,
one, sorry, but it's so important what you just said, because one aspect that we talked about in the start, it's regulation. And we humans learn to regulate through relation with another. If you had those experiences and this knowledge to calm yourself down, so that is amazing capability. And that is amazing thing to have. So it helped you in so many ways. I'm so jealous of you in that time, but not in a bad way. But really, I envy you because if I remember how many frustrations I had and I didn't know how to address them, oh my God, you are so structured. Oh my, all the best. But on the other side, yeah, if you didn't have the experience of having safe adults that basically sees that, hears you, and accepts you in those sensations, situations, that can become a struggle of not feeling safe to share with anyone, not feeling safe to be vulnerable about it, because you got gifts on the one side, but on the other side, it was probably, you can agree, a little bit too much of responsibility for this young Rob.
just to give you a little bit more clarity, I was lucky. I was safe. I did have good models. And in a sense, my mum had always given me confidence. She would always be, if other people can do it, you can do it. So I had this strong belief
Good.
that I could solve any problem because that's what she would say. Actually, it was all from a misunderstanding. So I had a very dramatic big sister, and I remember once we were sitting ready to go out, and I think I could hear mum and dad shouting somewhere in another room, and she just looked at them and said, "They're not really our parents." She'd always had this dramatic story that her mum was a Hollywood actress who was going to come back and save her. She was only young as well, but she was obviously a dramatic child. So she said, "Yeah, they're not really our parents. They're murderers, and they're going to come and get us in the middle of the night." And so they'd come back in, and obviously she'd not thought any more of it. And it's not the sort of thing that you're going to ask. So most of the time I was confident that it wasn't true, but it's like that kind of thing, like maybe if you've watched a horror film, is it true, isn't it true, is that a noise? So I felt, I guess, to hedge my bets, I wasn't sure until I was about 11. And so through that time, I never felt I could show weakness. I felt that would make me unsafe. I felt I always needed to show to be strong. And so what that meant is that I've never been emotionally expressive because it didn't feel safe. So that is wired down into my automatic system. And it also means I've been uncomfortable about sharing things because things never felt safe to share. Like I was never sure what I was supposed to know and what I wasn't supposed to know. So, for example, I got mugged when I was 15, 16. And it happened that it was a place where there was quite a lot of muggings. And anyway, we went to court and I had to give evidence. And the police had told me that they were going to tell we were two opposite gangs and I was part of this other gang. And we didn't know each other. And it was a gang thing rather than a mugging. But because the police had told me, when they cross-examined me, I wasn't sure if I was supposed to know it. So I was uncomfortable. So I looked shifty and they got off basically because did look like that, but it was because it's that kind of thing. I don't being over if I'm talking on the phone, I don't like being overheard because I'm never sure what I'm supposed to reveal. So in that sense, it's probably made it harder for me to connect to people, not necessarily close people, but more social. On the other hand, I think the confidence that mum had given me. So I think I had a perfect parenting for confidence because my mum would always like, if other people can do it, you can do it. And she'd very much had this strong, she'd come over from Ireland, she'd been bullied for her accent and whatever, and she had this thing of fight and do it. And whereas my dad was much less confident and whatever, but he probably had dyslexia and literacy, and he'd come over from this country school in Ireland where everyone was in like one hall, and obviously standards weren't very high. He came over to a Catholic school in London where the nuns beat them and called him thick, and I think he probably had dyslexia and stuff. So he was never confident, and he would give me a lot of opportunities. He'd ask me to check his writing and things like that, even when I was young. So I had mum telling me, you can do it. I had this strong will that I felt I wanted to do things. I wanted more responsibility. And then I had the dad that let me do things. Like I remember he was fixing a neighbour's roof and he let me work it out. He acted like he didn't know what he clearly did, but he let me figure it out and do it when I was 12, 13. In that sense, I had the perfect environment to grow up confident. And
Yeah, and that's the fact that confuses so many people because even in those situations, so I recognize the first time you mentioned it, that you probably had amazing parents that did encourage you, did see the potential in you, did tell you and offered you this space to actually get your confidence and believe in yourself and pursue. And this is amazing because not all people have that and not in such extent. So it's really amazing thing. But what I would outline is that trauma is not connected with the intensity of catastrophe, but it's connected with how we felt and how we dealt with this situation. So it could be this incident you mentioned that took you for quite a while in this internal work and actually made you feel unsafe, despite the logical part knew at some point that it's not real, but emotion when you heard this and it was at that young age was normal. Of course, you froze and were afraid and you had doubts because those are the people you trust the most as kids. And sister is another human that you are connected to, and you, of course, it's confusing. And apart from it, I have a similar sister with certain things like that. So I know I had the same one with spiders. I still have struggle about spiders because of her jokes, but let it go. Okay. But what I wanted to say is that, of course, that this can be a foundation of certain dynamics you have now in relations because you were definitely left alone in it and you needed to handle it yourself. And in those situations, at this age, it's hard to be your own care, be your own nurturer, and to actually explain to yourself it's okay, it's safe, because you don't feel it and you don't, even if you want to feel it, you don't believe it because there are doubts. And this is why emotional experiences are so complex because they are often linked to the situation. Many people don't even remember childhood because it was so traumatic, they deleted everything. But now in adulthood, it's interesting when they start to understand that there is connection and it's important to address. You can get certain parts of the story without digging into the pain. This is one beautiful part of empowerment because you are not digging into these painful moments, but you are actually exploring, you will like that, you're exploring a mindset of certain emotion. So I believe that every emotion has certain mindset that is attached to it based on all those situations that are affecting it. And when you look at this emotion you have, you actually get access to all those thoughts and beliefs and assumptions you have around it. So this is why when we are angry, we have completely different mindsets that when we are happy, because there are different thoughts, there are different neurons, and it's different. The way we build up those mechanisms is the way that are shown. And you, as your life basically guided you, and all those different steps you made, you are well aware what are your strengths and weaknesses and how you function and how your brain actually operates, how you can support yourself. So this is a big one because I always like to say it's not that I don't like the fact that people want to resolve all and become this perfect, I don't know what kind of version they have in mind, because I fell in that trap. I wanted to be a perfect mama, I wanted to be a perfect partner, and I was a complete perfectionist about it, and I almost burned out about it because I was not acceptive about who I am and what I am. I was not accepting those mechanisms that helped me survive in certain situations, even if it was just my drama, my emotional drama in myself, even if it was not something fully traumatic from the outside, it was traumatic for me. And it was dramatic for me. And it was hard, this acceptance and compassion. It's so fascinating for me from that aspect because I wanted to make it all right. I wanted to clear it all out. And I realized you cannot. For 2 months, only thing I was doing was crying and doing this and that. And I had so many strategies and tools and different kind of techniques to help me, but I was feeling worse. And it was when my partner came and looked at me in the eye and said, "Darling, I think you need a different strategy." And I was like, "What? I'm trying so hard. I'm doing all I can. I cannot do more. Maybe you should do less." What? Even more. But I, as we talked further, I realized he was right. For those 2 months, I had breakthroughs. I had wins, but I didn't acknowledge them. I ignored them completely. I was pushing myself. I was judging myself, and I couldn't be the mom and the partner and the Branca after I wanted to be because I was caught up in all this should and could and why and such. So I celebrate the fact that you know yourself so well because what you said, it's so amazing because you learn how to balance what you are, how you are, and how you operate in a way. And you still know that if you have a desire or will have a desire in certain time, that you can address even those aspects that are not bad or in any way wrong. They are unique to you. But if you would want, for example, to feel more clarity or to gain more clarity around people, is it possible to get there with your steps proactive? But if you found a way to live with it and to build your life around it so that it doesn't feel hard for you or stressful, that's okay. And if it does at some point, you can do something because you have this amazing mindset of, I can do it all. Thanks to your mama. Really amazing upbringing.
I have so much respect for people that have come from a background where they can't trust the people, they can't trust their parents or their family. And I think that must be so hard to come from a place that where there was no kind of moral compass. Like I used to deal with kids who basically by the time of high school had learned never to trust, never to tell the truth, not to talk because it wasn't safe to do. And I think I've come across people who have had that kind of background and basically they've had no one they can rely on, no one they can trust. And it's very hard. I can't even comprehend how you would learn how to navigate the world because if there's no one you have to from the start, your whole experience of life is that everyone is untrustworthy, everyone is unsafe. You've got no referential experience to go back on. Yeah, I've seen people, and some people stay trapped in it and they perpetuate it, but others break free and they like create their own life and they find the environment and people that they can trust and they learn. But it's so difficult. It must be something that you come across.
It's quite common. This is such an important question because I mentioned this aspect that made me really curious. So the fact that people were miserable as employees as well as leaders. So the other part of the world that was extremely interesting to me and at the same time fascinating, and I was so curious but did not get answers, is why certain people do bad things. Why do they commit a crime? Why do they harm others? Why do they fight? Why? A lot of questions because you observe. I was happy enough and I'm grateful for the fact that in my house it was not fighting, beating. I didn't experience that from my parents. Yeah, there were disciplined actions, but not in a way of violence. And I'm truly grateful for it. But not a lot of people have this privilege. Many people, yeah, are raised in a terrible situation. And as I see it today, and as I was learning all those different aspects, it made me realize one really big breakthrough I got from this aspect. So our core need is to be accepted, to be loved, and to be safe. And if those are not built up from the start, from the young age, and we don't get that in any form from our family and our upbringing, we come to the adolescence, like you said, with a broken compass inside of us. So first of all, we are not able to even express, show. It's basically poker face in some way. And what also happens in those years is that we are starting to connect with peers. You have parents that are strict, that are always blaming, shaming, and basically saying awful things to you. First of all, your mindset is awful. You will have a lot of self hatred. And at the same time, I don't know if you are familiar with this phenomenon that what you're telling your kids, they will become. So, for example, if you will tell your kid every day that you're lazy, actually, over time, this will become true for him. May it be in a form of self belief, but behavior will adapt to the beliefs that parents have about children. So, those kids have many different harming beliefs about themselves. For example, they entered high school, there is where the struggle starts to happen, and you had certain experience like that. So it will be interesting for you to hear this. You either have extremes with people that are not taught from the young age how to regulate, how to be healthy, motivated, confident, and so on. So on one side, you have survival coping mechanism that goes into people pleasing, they are having no boundaries, serving all, forgetting about yourself, your own needs, your own happiness, just for the sake of the peace of the calm environment so that everyone else feels okay. So this means that I will be probably safe. Those people have enormous empathy that is not genuine care for building relationships. They can learn it, but the basis is rooted in this fear. I need to read the room so that I know if I can mention something, if I can do something, or if I need to hide. So this is one aspect. And those are often those who were good kids. They did things right. They were celebrated. So it's the other side. They were celebrated for being good. What that does to them is not expressing things that are not so good, not admitting things that are not so good, learning how to cover things, learning how to fake, basically. And now we come to the other side, the one that you mentioned. So the ones that actually were criticized and were blocked in the expression, their unique voice was basically shut out from the beginning. So they were not able to express them. They were not able to find their voice. And even more, they have a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of harming beliefs about themselves in their head. And as they are looking for peers, it's normal. Good ones and people pleasing ones, they connect with one group and they are connected and related to one another. And there is the group of bad guys and bad girls who are doing rebellion in one way or another. But they are forming another group that has these tendencies of rebellion. And to what extent you go shows to what extent you feel safe. So I don't know about you, but I was pretty rebellious. But at the same time, I had a clear boundary of not harming people, of not doing too much damage for others. We did stupid things, but when things got too much off so that it would be an actual, I don't know, criminal offense or something like that, I stepped back. I had boundary and I did not do it despite the fact that I would maybe be excluded. But I had certain relation and connection between our family. I have three sisters and we are quite connected. The same with parents. It was up and down, but they were amazing in so many ways and still are, I have to say, fortunate to say it. And what happened is that those kids, they were told all their life that they are bad, they are nothing, they are worthless, and so on. And now they found a gang and a group that celebrates them, their uniqueness, their voice, they are daring, they are saying, and they are acting like cool adults because they're basically copying their parents. And they found themselves and they feel accepted in this group. They feel celebrated in this group. And if this is not recognized and addressed soon, they will start to identify themselves as a criminal. I am like that. I'm bad. I'm doing bad things. And at least I can be celebrated if I do enough strong things. So if I will be so stupid or so naive or so daring, the more celebration will be and people will be excited to hear about it. And They strive for the same emotion, to be accepted, to be heard, to be valued for who they are. But as they are not getting that, they can get on this other side. And many sad stories are formed with it. And here I believe that it's important factor. Does this kid meet an adult that sees them and is willing to invest time and energy in this person? Because most of the time, those people that had this experience and actually managed to get on the other side, started with personal development, started to explore things, were the people who had maybe a teacher who recognized the struggle and started to do with them by one. And on the other hand, they were maybe parents from a friend or a neighbor or someone outside of their family that gained their trust and actually let them know it's okay. Let's do it together.
That's really profound because that really explains gang culture, which when I'm talking about the school I worked in, that was quite prevalent, is now with county lines gangs, which are basically, have you come, I don't know if you have that there or if you've heard of it, but it's basically, say, drug gangs in London will come somewhere here, like here, which is out in the country, and now get these kind of vulnerable kids and have them basically dealing their stuff and supply them with weapons and drugs and things to extend their reach.
We don't have it to such extent, but yeah, it's present even in Slovenia.
I can see a lot of that happen. But yeah, like you, I went to an all boys school, and if you go to all boys school, the way that you have your place in the pecking order is how well you can fight. Without having girls, it just becomes about male dominance or whatever. It's a lot more fighting. And the other school in the town was boys' school, so there was always school fights and woodwork and metalwork. We used to be people making weapons. But I never got into that. I was like, I would spend my time arguing and fighting with school because I didn't want to be in school. I didn't see it as my identity, so I was never going to get caught up in that. And equally, then as you're older and you're going out, everyone was getting into fights, and there was always this kind of, I don't know if it's anger or proving yourself or something, but I never lost myself in that, and I just never had that need. But when you're talking about,
because you had strong foundation, you had a foundation of safety and acceptance at home. So you were basically looking for a way to connect. If you wanted to connect, you had to have certain fights. You had to engage in certain way that the boys did, and it's healthy to some degree. That you need to test your powers and such. It's what the masculine energy needs in some way, but where is the limit and where it goes beyond it, that is the challenge where we go into, like you said, killing and fighting and shooting and all the other really serious crimes and stuff that are sad.
Yeah, I think that's why I went into boxing, because I think I was the only one who didn't have a criminal record. I felt it was a way of proving yourself, but without having the ramifications that would come. So going back to that, I don't know if you've ever come across the work of Dr. Mario Martinez.
I don't recall the name. So tell me what it was all about.
Basically, he says that everyone has a core wound from childhood, and they have one of three wounds. And those are abandonment, betrayal, or shame. And the wound that you have will manifest in different ways, and it requires different types of healing. And for him, healing is within the relationship. So if you've been shamed, you have to be honored. If you've been betrayed, you have to be not trusted, but you have to be made trustworthy, or be in an environment where you can trust.
You can trust, yeah.
And if you're abandoned, you need to be in a relationship that shows loyalty. It's really interesting, but quite a good frame for looking at how someone behaves now and linking it back to what happened and what was the most dominant wound that you have from childhood, and to show that kind of field of how you heal it. So in your work now, what does that look like? Who are the type of people that show up? What are the symptoms that might trigger them to reach out to you? What does it look like when you're working with them? And maybe what are the benefits that people typically see?
Yeah. So the most often is maybe leaders, maybe people who are fully committed to the career. Some are entrepreneurs, like it is said today, or even creative type. The reason they are coming is actually emotional frustration. So not being able to stop reactions, not being able to manage stress, and not being able to achieve clarity. Those are typically the three top ones. And exhaustion, that is in the middle. And what is basically the biggest reason is it is sad, and I hope that I will get to the point that people decide to reach out fast, because with emotions it's often like that. You don't get to the point when you start looking at it before you hit to the wall. And usually this wall is either health crash, bankruptcy, losing a job, losing a partner, family. So it's a big crash in life that shows you, oh my God, everything is crazy, confused, and I don't know what to think. So usually those people have certain background, certain knowledge around mindset and those tips that are so prevalent, how to be productive and how to manage stress. They know it intellectually, but they do not know how to embody it. They may have had trainings, they may have had presentations, courses, and so on. But the problem is that when the amygdala shuts, it's over. And it's connected with disappointment, with a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. This is why this model is interesting, and I will look it up. I did not hear about it, and I would love the reference because I wanted to check it. So yeah, it's a lot of shame, it's a lot of guilt, it's a lot of anger, it's a lot of frustrations that are connected with it. So that they are not even able to confront what is happening because a lot of judgment is put on them by them, not even by the outside, but inside. So it's interesting that at first compassion was not even a pillar or important part of this empowerment as I saw it, because for me, to some degree, it's natural. I was always natural empath, and I have this way of offering space of no judgment. I heard a lot of it from people because I like to say that we are all humans, and yeah, we all make certain things and we all mess up certain things, but at the end of the day, who am I to judge you? I respect you and I'm honored to hear your story. And I'm not hearing it to judge you, but I'm hearing it to help you uncover it and understand it. So it's quite interesting that when we start the session, we are all formal and all those typical, like you would read LinkedIn posts. What can I do with this? What can I do? I struggle with this, I struggle with this. And with a few interactions, we start to go, it's often that they try to share one thing that it's not so comfortable. And they see that many times I hear for the first time, I'm accepted. I feel accepted. I feel heard and not judged. So this makes it that we go similar that we did. So we get really fast through the talk about emotion to the stories that are layered that they know already about, but they don't have a map how to put them together, how to learn from them. So the basic structure of coaching is that we have 3 months program. Once a week is a session. And this session actually combines self-leadership, human connection, compassion, and mindfulness. And what that means, actually, it's a halfway exploration of who you are and how to lead the person actually realizes the strengths, the weaknesses. Like I said, you are amazing in those areas. You understand yourself, you know how you operate, and you know how to get yourself into certain situation, certain action as I perceive you. So many people struggle in that and they want to improve their leading, but at the same time, they struggle internally of what it actually means to lead others and what is it that is important to address. And the most shocking one is often that the most common aspect they want to resolve is communication. And we almost always come to all this emotional background that makes communication hard. So here is, yeah, self-control, self-management, awareness, actually recognizing what is happening and calming yourself down, building up response, healthy response, empowered response, and it's basically combined. Let me go to the pillars. So first one, I said a little bit. So human connection is really about boundaries, about respecting others, how to build trust and actually believe that it can be built, how to communicate in a way. So for leaders, struggle is big with feedback, with difficult information, with colleague you like, but you have to let go or something like that. So how to handle this internal situations you have in those moments so that you can actually use all those tips that you read about on LinkedIn. Because even if we have it logically, when you are caught up, you should. And it's really foundational. So, first, understanding why, what, and how all happens on the brain level, on the body level, how to recognize, how to basically identify triggers. And when this part is clear, so when this part is basically covered to the point that the person realizes the personal role and personal responsibility, we can get to the point of exploring self-compassion and mindfulness. And even though I said it like that, I have to say self-compassion is combined that we even make it to this level because it's often hard to admit to yourself certain things about your communication, about your internal struggles and such. So self-compassion is basically the glue that holds all together because every time a person will start to apologize, judge themselves, or in any way try to apologize for things, I will remind them it's okay, relax, have compassion towards yourself. You didn't know better. You're here to learn how to do it. And it's amazing because you see how people are afraid of expressing, how people are afraid of sharing, and how afraid they are that this will be used as a weapon. It's really sad. But on the other side, the beautiful part is that by the end of this program, I remind them of this compassion part so many times that it stays with them. And they are able to actually stop themselves, like I stopped them. This comes together. So one way of this new communication intern is formed through the experience they have. On the other side, we also do practice of mindfulness. So learning how to be mindful, a lot of people still don't know. And even I struggled 3 years between I knew what was the mindfulness and actually did it. So we get those foundations and then this mindfulness is really supporting everything because you probably know when you're grounded in the present, you're most capable of addressing things, you're most capable of sitting clearly resolved. Basically, the only thing we have is now. And the more we get back to it, the more we see. For example, in the sessions, it will happen that the person will fly too much in the past or in the future and so on. It will be reminded that the energy, you're losing energy because you're going too far. Let's focus on what is happening right now, what is right now. Because what I want with this empowerment coaching to achieve, it's like I said before, not digging to get all the pains, but to actually address what is happening, what is present in your world right now, and work with that. If we address just one aspect, it's never just one, but because when we start to address one, it's connected with many different ones. But when we get to the end of those 3 months, client actually gets the roadmap. They have experience and the proof they can go through for any situation. And the helping part is also Map of Power. I also have ebook available for free on my profile in a featured section. It's basically a roadmap. I made it very visual and clear so that you can see actually what is the process to get from the survival mode to basically empowered mode, empowered action, calmness, and such. It's based on the neuroscience and emotional intelligence combined, how our body works and how all of this is connected. And the link to the other side is basically credited. And it's well explained. The feedback I got is really simple, it's clear, and it's on the point of what information we need. Like with everything we do on coaching and as well with this information I share or you find in this book or in my book, Human Empower Yourself, which is a representation of what I mean and what I believe about empowerment. Those informations are useful and will help you when you start doing the work. So only knowing is one part, but regular exercise and regular investments, daily investments are key. So you will not get with me a lot of homework and write up, I don't know, 3 pages or such. No, you have one small and commit to it the whole week. And it's building those small foundations. From my experience, it doesn't go any other way. If you start too big, you will be disappointed. You will quit sooner or later because you don't have that much capacity. You don't have that much of the faith of will, whatever it is. So that's basically the process. And the end result that it's the most common shared is basically having clarity around what is happening despite being stressed. So noticing when the stress is coming and feeling this sense of control. I know what to do. I know how to handle it. Sometimes you need 15 minutes, sometimes you need 30 minutes, sometimes you need 5 minutes. But just this knowledge that I know how to handle it and I know I will not be drowning in it for, I don't know, 3, 4 days, it's a big one. Another one is basically more energy. This is quite instant because after 2, 3 sessions, people report that they finally realize how fast you can regain energy because mindfulness does that. So it's really an energetic level. They lose guilt and shame around self-care. So prioritizing self-care is a big part because I want to look at life in a holistic way. And we all know that we need to care for ourselves, but we feel guilty to set up the time and dedicate to it. And even more, not just not feeling guilty for taking the time, but also not overthinking when you do. Because I don't know about you, but the experience is often that you do find time and you do dedicate that you will do something and you will take care of yourself and invest this time. But when you're doing it, you're constantly thinking about job or other problems or other things you need to do after that. How much is the hour? Am I 2 minutes late? So it's anxious. It's anxiety in action because we feel uncertain about the future, about what will happen because we took 1 hour or 30 minutes off. So this guilt removal or guilt understanding, I would say, because I never teach to remove or delete emotions. I actually unlearned that from what previous coaches did. A lot of people learned that you need to delete all emotions and just accept all the beautiful ones and the high level ones. I support that. It's amazing when you train yourself enough that you are able to elevate on those levels. But until you are human in the situations that those feelings come up, feel them, accept them, let them go. Because if you don't, you will explode sooner or later. And many times this is the reason why they come. The last I would outline is basically improved relationship. May it be with coworkers, may it be with partners, may it be with team for those who are leaders, because you know that when someone starts to become aware of them, of their communication, of their sensations, they change the way they communicate, the way they relate, the way they respond. And it's quite obvious. Those 3 months are the period when those changes are slowly implemented. And there is struggle on the leader's side, insecure, not confident enough, frustrated because still I went to the same pattern again and I still shouted, okay, but did you stop? Yeah, congratulations. Did you breathe? Yeah, congratulations. But I still shouted, okay, you know it, congratulations. And they are looking at me like, what? But this is the journey. Yeah, 1 month ago, you didn't even realize it. You didn't even know that you can stop. You didn't even allow yourself to stop. So why you would judge yourself because the last step is not winnable at the moment. And also the team, for example, it responds differently because maybe they are not trusting, maybe they are frustrated still, maybe they are confused, maybe they want to basically be that bad guy that will do it like that. Are you for real? Is this real? When you will explode. And all sorts of characters are in the team. And we also learn and explore this aspect of unique personalities in the group, diversity. So, how to basically embrace the fact that every team member is different, make a strategy that they know them better. A lot of times they don't know anything outside of what they do. And even that is sometimes questionable. So that they understand, because some people they like to tease, and if they are like that and you're their leader and you know that fact, it's easier to let go of that teasing when it happens, because you know that it's not personal to you, but it's their form of handling this situation. Many situations it's like that. First of all, it's a little more confusing because all those changes, just like when you start setting boundaries, you feel guilty, you feel frustrated, and at the same time people are reacting, they are resenting, and so on. So it's a process, and embracing that, I remind them basically on every session at least 3 times to be patient, to be self-compassionate, to be one step at a time, and celebrate your wins. So those are the mantra, I could say.
Sounds powerful program.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me. So, for example, I'd never connected this story I told you about my older sister. It was when I first looked at public speaking. So, today is the 99th episode of this podcast, but it was originally a relationship one. And one of the very early podcasts was with a speaking coach, and she has this philosophy of psychology of the voice. And she will listen to you and she will tell you basically what your story is. So I interviewed her and I went on her podcast, and she was like, "You're just so closed off." She said, "You like, you know what you're talking about. You're rock solid about what you talk about, but you won't let anyone in. You won't show anything." And so I told her the story. So it was really where I connected that. In having to speak, I think the fear of public speaking is the fear of revealing yourself, and then you have to confront the shame and all the hidden things, the self-judgment and all of that in relationships. So I've always taught that when a couple meet, there's a breaking point of their relationship, and that is set, and that is their operating model. Where their operating models meet, where they become challenged enough, there's the point where the relationship is going to break. Unless they adapt and change those operating models, that's where why the relationship will break. And then I think the other area you talked about was leadership. And so obviously I've come from a personal background of happiness, stress, relationships, conflict, and now teams. And now I'm looking more at leadership from the perspective of how does leadership interact on people? How is it going to work on the psychology of people? And leadership is really, I think the current model of leadership is asking people to be superhuman, and it's asking them to be 100% together. And so I can see how this is going to be beneficial, because first time managers fail 60%, isn't it, on the first 2 years? And I think they fail because not because of the technical competencies, but because the jump to emotional of how people are viewing them, of being able to say those difficult things, all of that stuff is too challenging. And I think often we haven't recognized the emotional leap that it takes and the emotional growth that is needed in order to have the technical competencies to lead. So I can see in those 3 areas where it's where we become challenged. Are you familiar with the hero's journey? And I think that's the call to adventure. The ordinary world is where you're a competent specialist or technician, and then the new world is becoming a leader, and where you've got to face the belly of the beast and the fears. You've got to challenge yourself in that arena before you can grow. The hero's journey is in films, it's always like Luke Skywalker fighting the Galactic Empire or whatever they are, or the Matrix or Neo doing that, or Harry Potter or whatever. But the real journey is their self-doubt. The real journey is before they conquer the empire or whoever it is, they have to conquer their self-doubt that they can do it. And I think that's what you're giving to people, that emotional growth, which, like you say, a lot of people have never had the role model. No one ever talks about it, and it's very new. I think Daniel Goleman's book came out when I was at university.
I was
So
born in that year.
93 was when I set up my gym. No, 93, yeah, the end of 93. And yeah, I went back to, because of my rebellion, I never wanted to go to university. And I went back late. And yeah, so I went back when my daughter was born. She's probably just a couple of years younger than you. So yeah, that's making me feel old now.
No, I have to say it because I don't perceive you old at all. No, don't.
I don't
No.
perceive me as old. Like you see people you grew up with and you look and you go, God, we're old. But I never feel it. But
Oh, okay, that's good.
yeah. Yes. So it's a new subject. And I think there's so much challenge in leadership that I think where everyone needs to have that journey. I don't like to prescribe. I was around at the beginning of coaching. Or I don't say the beginning of coaching, but I learned from Thomas Leonard, who was like the father of the ICF and all of that. And their whole mantra was everyone needs a coach. And my instinctive rebellion thing is no, they don't. You can't prescribe for everyone. And I think everyone finds it in their own way. But having said that, I think for a lot of people, an efficient and effective way is to have a guide, someone like yourself, who can save you the shortcuts and that process. I've loved the conversation. I could go on so many more ways, but we need to wrap up. So if someone is on that journey, looking to for a guide, and I think from our conversation, you are clearly competent, compassionate, and someone who can guide people through that journey, how should they reach out to you?
The easiest way is LinkedIn. This has become my main channel because having Facebook and webpage and so on, it was too overwhelming for me because I'm not that creative in technology. And yeah, I love real life and nature and gardening. And on LinkedIn, I also have email address. If it's preferred method, no worries, send me an email and we can talk further. That is
Okay.
it.
And you also have your ebook and your book.
Yeah, they are
And
also in the featured section. So this ebook I mentioned is Map of Power. This is free. It's basically a lead magnet. So yeah, it's not free. It's for your email. Sorry. But on the other side, I have a book called Human Empower Yourself. So it's a book. It's available on Amazon. It's a small price for it, and it's basically a great roadmap to show this philosophy behind my work. And at the same time, it offers a lot of little nuggets that really can empower you and set you off to true self compassion and basic drive to go further. That's it. And the last thing I would mention is that I'm building the online course Leading with Emotional Intelligence. The pre order is open already. It's in the building phase, so I will not get the deadline right now. But the main point of this course is not giving you a lot of knowledge because you have internet, you have ChatGPT and all the other stuff that you can get all the information or just open up LinkedIn and type in emotional intelligence. So my main goal with this course is that leaders have emotional first aid toolbox. So this will be the section where you will find 10 tools that are basically based on neuroscience, emotional intelligence, and other paths of science that are combined. And it's actually a roadmap, step-by-step process how to use them so that they can be trained and used in a certain way. It will be supported with video guidance for those who would want to learn more about the process and how to implement it. For those who like just lines, you have it. There will be some part of education, but really, this is not my main focus. So I will outline those facts that were the most important aspects of my learning so that I went from I know it to I do it. This gap was big and I struggled a lot. I will not lie. It was not easy. And I understand that. So those aspects of how our brain works, how our heart expresses and so on, those will be explained, but not in a classical way because those informations are all over the place, but people still don't know how to implement, how to use. So this is why the third section actually will have tips and tricks on spot. Here will leaders will find different situations that are happening in leadership. So, for example, communication troubles, feedback, conflicts, a lot of sick days, high turnover, those different reasons that emotional intelligence can. And in those sections, there will find which tools can help, what are possible reasons for it, and how they can address it from inside out. And here is connection to the last pillar and model. This is off spot. So on spot is, for example, in the office, in the business, in the relationship, whatever it is, because many things from this course are also applicable to other relationships. But I want to focus it on leadership for now. So this one is off spot. That means time for yourself. So when you have time for self-care, what can you do? So practice of mindfulness, of reflection, of meditation. I will share how I got to the point that I was even able to meditate because I struggled a lot with it. It was hard for me, and it also has different roots in this emotional mechanism. So basically, I want to express and share how I got to basically understand and use those aspects so that they actually benefit me, not just my brain, intellect, and ego. I know it, but to actually do it. So this is something I'm building. You're invited to check it out. The offer page is still not so made up. So this is the best explanation besides the posts I'm doing, but I don't want to force things. But I strongly believe that this is something that people need, the leaders need, that the business world needs, and I want to build it and share it. So if anyone's interested, also in my future section, and you can pre-order it right now and have it secured. So that I believe it is.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you for the therapy. Thank you for the information. It's been fascinating. And
Cool.
yeah, no, I've thoroughly enjoyed it and time's flown by.
As a compliment, I enjoyed it. It was really fascinating. And I didn't know that we will go in so many ways, but I'm so passionate about this. And it's really such an important topic for many people around the globe. So I hope that many will decide and see this, listen to it, and gain some wisdom, some value from it.